Give me your assessment of John Oliver. What is there's actually something. This is very sophisticated information warfare presented as comedy. Walk us through why this is important and why we're dealing with it, Brother Paoletta.
Steve, thanks for having me on. John Oliver's a clown, right? A British clown. But what's really going on here is that the left is furious that the Supreme Court is no longer theirs. And what happened a couple weeks ago, right? You had the Colorado case, right, which the left deluded themselves into thinking was some kind of real case. They have these, constitutional law experts talking about how a Secretary of State can disqualify presidential candidate, right? Nuts stuff, but it's actually has this currency of somehow being legitimate. And guess what? It gets up to the Supreme Court and I was there. I sat in the courtroom to watch that argument. And it was such a beatdown, an absolute beatdown on the left. I don't know how that guy walked out of that argument. It was so horrible. And every single justice on the Supreme Court, left and right, the liberals piled on this guy. And so and I think the left realized, wow, we are going to get blown out. I think it's probably going to be a 9-0 decision on that one. That's regarding Colorado and Maine and the secretaries of state and these crazy state courts trying to remove Donald Trump from the ballot and thwart democracy. But they realize they don't control the Supreme Court, and what do? Their go-to thing is attack Clarence Thomas. Right? Yeah. It exposes their racism, but that's what they want to do. They attack Clarence Thomas and the court. If you looked at that piece, right, who did they go after? They went after Gorsuch. Yeah. They went after Alito. They went after Scalia. They didn't go after the left justices, right? They want to just try and destroy the court, right, by going after them on this garbage ethics stuff. And we know the Democrats don't care about ethics, right?
But yes, it is racist, obviously. But in addition, this is not Robert's court. This is Clarence Thomas. This is the Thomas court, is it not, sir?
1,000%, Steve. I've said that many times on your program. It is the Thomas court. He is the intellectual leader, and he is the model of courage on that Supreme Court. And it drives the left nuts, right? And again, when I watch these things, it's the same old tired, dishonest stuff. And it gets, I don't know, it's boring to walk through how many lies or dishonest things are in there, right? But what did he call Clarence Thomas in that? John Oliver, the most consequential justice on the Supreme Court. And the left knows that. He is the most consequential. He is our greatest Supreme Court justice, in my view, in our history, right? And he has been on the court for 33 years. And you know what he did?
Why do you say? Yeah.
He was laying down these decisions, Steve, right, on abortion, on affirmative action, on the administrative state, on the Second Amendment, all in dissent over the years. And guess what? Right? His intellectual honesty and courage, right? He has brought this court and these new appointees, all these young appointees that are on the court. Guess what? They loved Clarence Thomas when they were young people. I worked on these confirmations, as you did, right? Gorsuch writing back in the early 2000s about Justice Thomas's opinion in Kelo, his dissent, right? And so he has built a far-reaching court that's going into the future. And the court, and just what does John Oliver talk about?
But hang on. John Oliver, this is what drives him crazy. He is the intellectual leader of the Thomas Court. The reason he's the head of the Thomas Court, or the intellectual leader, is that he is. And as you remember, we had a 5-man committee that worked through the selection. It was Don McGahn, Mark Paoletta, Reince Priebus, myself, and Mike Pence. And you and really Don laid out what we're looking for: opinions, brilliance, the written word to drive the court. And it was all around Clarence Thomas, what Clarence Thomas has done. And isn't that why they hate him so much? Because they hate that a conservative is a black man who is the intellectual leader of a court that is trying to thwart the radicalness and the demonic tendencies of the radical left, sir?
Yes, absolutely. The default to find judges for the Trump administration was who clerked for Clarence Thomas. There are 12 federal judges on the bench that are former Thomas clerks. There were lots of solicitor generals. The guy who argued the Dobbs case, Scott Stewart, out in Mississippi, he's a former Thomas clerk. There are tons of them all around there. And here's the other thing, Steve, if you remember during those interviews.
But whoa. Hang on a second. I want to repeat that. There are 12. This is in the Trump. There are 12 federal judges right now that were clerks for Clarence Thomas, correct?
Yes, and many on the courts of appeals. Some of them are going to be considered for the next Supreme Court opening. And what they learned from his is not just his originalism, right? His unfiltered, right, originalism. As you recall, I love Justice Scalia. He had at one point said he was a faint-hearted originalist, unlike Justice Thomas, right? Thomas is the real deal. You saw that in the Dobbs decision where he said substantive due process is false and can completely be thrown out, right, on lots of other opinions that had been touched on there. But what we showed in that interview was a chart that showed that almost every justice on the Supreme Court, if you remember this, Steve, had become more liberal since the time of the Warren Court and even before. They all became more liberal because they want to be liked. They cave to the leftist pressure. The only person who didn't was Clarence Thomas. And the question for those people were, why isn't this going to happen to you in 10 years or 15 years? Tell me why you're not going to drift. Why are you a person of principle that's going to stand by your principles? That's what Thomas has taught the justices on this court. And he is the leader, as I said, both intellectually but courage-wise, right? A guy who they come after nonstop, and he doesn't bend. That's what we need more of, and we need to support the court. And we need to support the court.
This is why they try. If they win this time, what they're going to try to do is pack the court. They're trying to expand the Supreme Court. They're going to try to expand the federal judiciary. You watch. They're coming after the court because they understand the court is the anchor right now for the populist movement. Right.